Hello and welcome to a live show by Sobirov's law firm. And today we have a lot of news to cover. We have new Prime Minister, I call him acting Prime Minister, and we have new Immigration Minister. Today in the studio is Mariam. Welcome, Mariam.
Thanks for having me, Rakhmad.
We will have an amazing conversation today about all things happening in immigration. It's never boring in immigration. So let's get started.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Just a quick reminder before we start. Please note that whatever you hear in these live sessions or any content you see on social media by Sobirov's law firm is general information only and not legal advice. While we may use certain real-life scenarios or legal cases for learning purposes, it is important to remember that this does not constitute a legal opinion. For personalized legal advice, please consult with your lawyer or hire a Canadian immigration lawyer. Now, let's get back to our show.
And we are back with you. Please send us your questions during this show. It's live, and if there are some technical glitches, please forgive us. So, Mariam, quick words about you, who you are, what you do.
I'm a business immigration lawyer with Sobirov. I've been a licensed lawyer with them since 2021. And I work front end and back end with clients on different cases, different things that they want to do, and help them find the right pathway and strategy for them in an ever-changing immigration landscape to help them kind of reach their end goals.
Out of, from 1 to 10, what's the anxiety level of people that you speak to?
Right now, it's about a 9.
About 9?
About a 9, yeah.
Not 9.9, no?
I mean, there's always room for improvement.
Okay, the reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, is that things are changing a lot in Canada, in Canadian immigration. We, the lawyers, are trying to catch up. We try to predict, but sometimes the predictions are not there. Today, we will be doing a lot of predictions because we have, as I said, we have a new Prime Minister for now, and we are going into elections April 28th, right?
Yes, that's right.
And we have new Immigration Minister Rachel Bendayan. So let's start with learning more about the Immigration Minister. We will talk about Mark Carney, the acting Prime Minister now. And let's start with our Immigration Minister, who she is, if we know anything about her and what she's done before coming to immigration portfolio.
Yeah, so our new Minister of Immigration is obviously new to the portfolio. Career-wise, she was a corporate commercial lawyer, so she's involved in the legal space. And I believe beforehand she served as Minister of Small Businesses at some point in her tenure as a politician. She hails from Montreal. She's part of an immigrant community herself, which is nice to see. Yeah, the floor is open to see what policies she'll bring and what, specific flavor, if you will, she'll bring to immigration law.
She's been sworn in as a minister on March 14th, 2025, after Mark Miller was, he resigned or he was shuffled out. But she's been appointed, Rachel Bendayan is now our Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. That's the full name of the ministry. And it was as a result of major shuffling of the cabinet, right?
Yeah, and reduction in cabinet size too.
Now we have less ministers,
yeah, we have
fewer ministers. Fewer. Okay. And as you said, she replaced Mark Miller. She's from the immigrant background. She's the first Canadian of Moroccan descent. And this gives us some hope, right? She's been in the politics since 2019. Most recently as a Minister of Official Languages?
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of official languages, for those who don't know, we have 2 official languages, English and French. She's from the French side of Canada.
Yes.
How do you relate that to her possible actions and reforms, let's say, in immigration?
Well, frankly, I think it's too early to say that she's going to be making reforms. A lot of what we've been seeing since Prime Minister Trudeau resigned and through now Prime Minister Carney's appointment, policy has stayed the same, the focus has stayed the same. Mark Carney himself has said that his immigration plans have not shifted from the previous administrations or the previous Prime Minister and ministers' goals. So from that angle, I'm not sure there's even much space or room right now for Minister Bendayan to do anything different or bring, shift the conversation, shift the direction over. It may be for the next little while, at least until the election is over and settled, just about maintaining the course. And we'll see what comes next. I will say it's no longer really a space where you're focusing just domestically on what's happening to shift immigration policy. You have, yes, the talking points have been there's a housing crisis, there's a, unemployment levels are rising, it's oversaturated and overpopulated in specific areas. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, immigration becomes the easiest scapegoat for these problems.
Yep.
But now you're not just looking at what's happening in the country, whether you agree or not with these talking points, you're also looking at what's happening south of the border to impact the flow of immigrants. So if nothing else, the demand on Canadian immigration is going to get a lot greater. And we've seen that. We've seen that not just from, the international community at large looking more and more at Canada as a place, or particularly in our line of work, to invest and build their businesses. But we're also seeing it from people in the U.S., both citizens, permanent residents, and temporary residents in the U.S. who are like, I just need to shift. This is no longer a space that feels sustainable or predictable or safe. So it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're looking for somewhere with more stability in policy to set up shop. Right.
Yeah. No. On francophone immigration, to that point that I raised, I slightly disagree in terms of first actions of Minister Bendayan were the following. She attended a citizenship ceremony on International Francophonie Day on March 20th, and she welcomed 64 new Canadian citizens from 31 countries around the world. That's an inclusion. Immigration funding, 9.3 million for 12 projects supporting Francophone minority communities across Canada. Can we talk about Francophone immigration a little bit? Because latest immigration draws, the express entry draws, were dominated by Francophone immigration, right? So what's happening there? What are your insights and maybe some tips for those who are watching us today?
Yeah, I mean, again, I will say this is not, kudos to her. I don't think this is something inherently just her move. I think this is a continuation of what we've been seeing for the last little while anyway. So we've saw a resurgence, a recommitment to Francophone immigration last year, right? We've been seeing these draws come through this year. So this to me is not something novel that she brings so much as an extension of existing policy. And yes, the fact that she's from Montreal, she's Quebec based, adds to that. But it's, it's a trend we've been seeing and people have been advising on for a long time. You want to improve your likelihood of permanent residency in Canada, the most successful.
Add French. Okay,
right?
That's been the message of our team. So at Sobirov's law firm, encouraging people to add French on top of English if you want to take permanent residence at the first try, like first step permanent residence, not TR to PR, but more like it directly coming from outside. I just met a family from Uzbekistan who immigrated through French immigration through express entry, and now they're landing, I think today or tomorrow, as permanent residents. That's a great achievement because it has become, as you know, very difficult to get PR at your first step, right? So,
and the same goes for people who are already here, whether they're business owners, entrepreneurs, or otherwise. The pathway forward still predominantly looks like add French. Whether you're going to be counted under the Francophone streams under express entry, or whether to boost your score under any of the other streams, this is really the path forward, and you can pivot that way. Just because you started off, as a business owner in Canada, and you've established yourself as a business owner, doesn't mean you can't access that Francophone pathway as well.
Yes, yeah. So start learning French. That's the key message today. Now, also, if we bring my screen on to our listeners, we seen that new immigration minister, according to Globe and Mail, she made this statement. She says that Trump's presidency could prompt best and brightest to choose Canada. You alluded to that at the beginning. What do you think? Is it a good prediction, or she's just advertising Canada in a way?
I think it's a good prediction. I think beyond the, beyond the economics of the U.S. and the economic policy, the protectionist policy they've kind of been picking up and being adamant about, the immigration landscape in the U.S. is really volatile right now.
Yes.
So yes,
with all the executive orders and
all
stuff.
the executive orders, sure, some of it may be sensationalized, but what it lends itself to is the impression that people have of it is it's unpredictable, it's scary, there's no security here, and I can be deported at any moment. I can be detained or deported at any moment. So
we shouldn't feel very bad in Canada in terms of instability in our immigration.
I like to say, why make anyone else the benchmark? Compete against yourself and do better.
Yeah.
But the issue is that, yes, more people are going to be looking at Canada, but is Canada equipped with the programs, with the quotas, because now we're talking about quotas in immigration law, and the systems to support this influx? It's fine to say, yes, more people are going to be interested in Canada, but is Canada open to them?
I would say to that, Mariam, Canada is equipped to a certain extent. Like there's, as you said, quotas, limits are set on international students. And Mark Carney, now we are talking about our Prime Minister now, Mark Carney said the caps will remain. Right? 2 days ago. He said the caps will remain, and basically, are we on an autopilot mode in immigration until such time that we have a settled, elected government on April 28th?
Yeah, most likely. I see this probably going on, honestly, even till June. You got to get through the election period, get sworn in again. There may be another shuffle. It's not outside of the realm of what's
what could happen,
what could happen with the Liberal government. Most of our shifts within our cabinet shifts and the immigration minister shifts over the last decade have been under the current, or I guess former Liberal government. So there's a lot that can still happen over the next couple months before we see things sort of stabilize and return, for lack of a better word, to business as usual. But then again, if the messaging and if the policy remains that we have to, as they say, return back to normal levels of immigration, manageable levels of immigration, what that's going to end up meaning is that you are going to get an influx of demand. You're going to get an influx of people who want to become, immigrants to Canada, permanent residents, and eventually citizens. And that makes it a lot more difficult for people. The bar ends up being raised to deal with, to find a middle ground between limited immigration numbers, but also huge demand for
and increasing competition for the limited number of spots. So, in those terms, by the way, feel free to type your questions because we are live, and we will get to your questions in a moment. And we received a few questions in advance, and we will answer them together with Mariam. So, in terms of competition, it's tight. It's limited to fewer spots now. And plus, immigration minister hasn't received her mandate letter, right?
Yes.
So the mandate letter is a usual process when you have a new minister, prime minister writes and sends a mandate letter telling Minister of Immigration to do X, Y, Z. So we haven't seen that.
Yeah.
That's another proof, a piece of proof that we will be running on those inertia that we inherited from Mark Miller times, right? It's not a new era of immigration. It's the same thing until the moment that we have a new elected government in April 28th. So, on April 28th. Yeah. So now, we talked a little bit about Prime Minister Carney. What's your take on him?
What's my take on Prime Minister Carney? I think he was the right choice for the Liberal Party. I think strategically for this upcoming election as well, whether we're talking about the one called now or it was supposed to be in October, he was the right candidate. Again, this keeps being referred to as a very pivotal election, not just for the country, but to manage every other influence and factor from outside of Canada that is going to have an impact on people. So I think he was the right choice. Strategically, it also makes sense for him to have called an election to kind of secure his position in Parliament. He's not an MP.
He's not elected at all.
He's not elected.
So it's a very unique situation in Canadian constitutional law.
And he does need I mean, effectively, he does really need a seat in Parliament to be able to be an effective leader. So, as I'm sure frustrated as people are with these constant elections, everyone's, got voter fatigue between, Canadian elections, Ontario election, the U.S. election is always a global event, so to speak. But it was strategically the right move to kind of set ourselves on a more stable path over the next 4 years. What happens in end of April, what happens as a result of the election is still up in the air. The Liberals and the Conservatives are still very much neck and neck in terms of predictions and polling. So we'll see what happens. That's kind of the attitude I've just had to adopt. I think we've all had to adopt is you just have to wait it out and see, because it is a little bit unpredictable at the moment.
I agree. And in this area of immigration, especially when it comes to business immigration, things are changing. Yeah. Yesterday, on March 25th, the points awarded that were used to be awarded to job offers, arranged employment, are no longer there. Government told us before that they will stop giving points in spring, but spring is a long season. Yeah. Suddenly, on 25th of March, we saw pulling the carpet out under our feet. And what's your take on that? And I'll share my thoughts too.
Yeah, so I mean, technically speaking, IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, gave us a modest, so to speak, a vague heads up in December that they planned to do this in the spring. The problem fundamentally is there were no details about, who this will apply to, which of the several scenarios that existed it would apply to, when exactly it would come into effect. Spring is between now and June.
Lunar spring, or which spring we mean?
Right.
Canadian spring hasn't started yet, right?
No, it has. It started actually 3 days ago, or 4 days ago. So we're a little late on the jump, but so there was just not a lot of information to go off of for such a monumental shift.
It's a fundamental change.
It's a fundamental shift. It's something that most people rely on, especially in this era of very inflated high minimum scores.
Passing scores.
It's a fundamental way and strategy that people have been planning out for years to be able to, regulate their status, become more permanent, get over that hump of just being constantly in temporary state. And the way that it came into effect was really climactic. Really, no major announcements like we've seen in the past.
Just silently.
Silently, the section related to it was repealed, and then people check your emails. If you have an email with IRCC, they sent out that email saying, heads up, this has just happened. And it got sent out to everyone. It got sent out to individuals. It got sent out to lawyers, other immigration professionals. Everyone learned about it at the same time.
Surprise.
By surprise, yeah.
So what's your suggestion or tips going forward? We see such examples like Ontario nominee program for entrepreneurs was stopped, paused without any announcement, without any notification, right? It's just disappeared from the website. Are we in this kind of a more like manual change and sudden change in immigration? Do we need to be ready for this kind of changes suddenly occurring in our lives going forward?
Yeah, if we're going to go based on and again, we have a new minister, we have a lot of new things coming, so maybe not, we'll see. It's too early to tell what 6 months from now will bring, but it's safe at this stage to assume that changes will be ongoing and just live that way and keep yourself mentally prepared for that. With business owners and business people and investors in Canada, this is a particularly difficult blow, because if you don't fall within the scope of the startup visa program
or PNP,
the PNP, or again, if you're in Ontario and you don't have an option of PNP, this was sort of one of the only ways to transition to PR once you've built your business. And frankly, it's not controversial to assume that someone who comes and invests a lot of money and creates something tangible and lays down those even economic roots would want to become a permanent resident, would want to become, have something more permanent for themselves and their families in Canada. So this is a huge blow to them as well, because I mean, you effectively had 3 pathways, right?
Yeah.
To PR as a business owner. You have the SUV, the startup visa program, you have the provincial nomination programs, and then if you don't fall into the first 2 categories, you've got
The job offer, increase
exactly.
your score, and then go.
Especially because you can't claim Canadian Experience Class points
Because
as a
you're
self-employed
self-employed.
person, right?
Yes. So we lost one avenue now, but 2 major avenues are there, and there will be more competition on on those pathways, right?
Exactly.
Startup visa program and provincial nominee programs are still available, and they are very good programs. We deal with them on a daily basis, and you can check out our detailed guidelines at sobirovs.com. So now let's get to the questions, Mariam,
Sure.
if you don't mind, because with the questions we will dive into more details. Now, we received some questions. Please send us your questions and we'll bring it to the screen. Now, under this question from our audience in advance, under this new leadership that we discussed, what's the current risk level for pathways like C11 and SUV? Are we finally going to see clarity, or will there be more confusion and delays?
So I'll say this, both of these programs have been very recently revamped.
Yep.
So those changes were already implemented to the policies themselves quite a while ago. The risks that develop aren't so much of the programs changing, although they could. I think it's more so, again, we're talking about that competition, that increased competition. And if we're talking about a quota, a set quota, then assessment of applications, the scrutiny around applications, the scrutiny around business plans and business experience is going to be a lot higher.
Feasibility, viability, and your commitment to really run the business, right?
What significant benefits you bring. So we saw that happen in the last iteration, the last update to the C11 program, where the details around what counts a significant benefit became a lot clearer, right? They really clarified what they do and don't consider significant. And we also see that now in more decisions that we see come about is, we don't, there's no significant benefit. It's not sufficient to count a significant benefit. So the competition around that is greater, and the level of complexity of these applications necessarily becomes greater, and so does the expectations.
The SUV, now we hear in the immigration bar that SUV work permits, optional work permit, 3-year open work permit, almost 50% are being denied. Even SUV, yes, PR aspect is another topic. It's driven by long processing times and whatnot. But even under SUV program, which is very popular among entrepreneurs, as you know, 50% of work permit applications are being denied. Why you think? Is it because of the scrutiny, heightened scrutiny now, or is it not true that the IRCC is assessing the viability of the startup concept? They're being engaged like an MBA students, basically, assessing the case-by-case basis.
I think it's 2 things. I think one, the 3-year open work permit is now available not just to new startup applicants, but to older startup applicants as well. So we are still, to a certain extent, dealing with the backlogs of the old
thousands
system.
of applications.
Right? And naturally, if those applications are taking anywhere between 7 years plus to come to a decision because of those backlogs, people are going to have to renew their status, right? They're going to have to, apply for another open work permit. They're going to or apply for the open work permit to extend their status. People who are abroad and maybe didn't come initially on a work permit now, as their businesses develop, need to be in Canada, right? So again, you're seeing this disconnect between, people who get the work permits are essential to the project, right? That's the way that the system is set up. That's the way that the policy is set up. So you're acknowledging that these people are essential. They have everything in order for their PR application. They have the letter of support from the designated organization. They're now following the rules and applying for this open work permit so they can come and do the essential work on their businesses, but they're being refused. So why is there a disconnect between within IRCC about what's happening on the PR end and what's happening on the work permit end? Because then you inevitably have IRCC coming in and doing spot audits and saying, show me what you've done with your business.
But all the essential workers are outside of Canada.
Sorry, nothing, because you haven't approved my work permit because I haven't had to be here. The other thing is the backlogs with work permit processing are also are becoming so much greater that by the time, you know, before even sometimes a decision on the work permit comes in, you're getting a PR approved. Right?
Yeah.
Which is not bad, but it does
As an ultimate
raise
goal,
questions.
it's not bad. Yeah. So there's, again, ambiguity, inconsistency. What would be your advice for those who are listening to us and are interested in startup visa program? Haven't applied yet.
Yeah.
Is it still good? What should be taken into account when you choose to apply or not?
It's still good. Again, competition's going to be greater, and there's already, and even within the overall immigration system, a separate quota for the startup visa system or for startup visa program. So competition is going to be greater. Spots are going to fill up much earlier on in the year as well. So if you're looking at this as an option, really aim for the first 3 to 6 months of the year.
Because all the 10 startups per designated organization are filled up very
Exactly.
quickly. Okay.
And then, I mean, keep in mind, a lot we're still seeing from these older applications, a lot of procedural fairness letters, a lot of questions from IRCC saying, show me what you've done, show me that this is genuine. So if you're going down this path, it's more than a passive investment. I say that to everyone. You have to be prepared to
actively as much as possible remotely or in person.
Work with your team. You have to make sure you're documenting any progress. You have to make sure that you are giving it, you know, a genuine and active effort and opportunity to grow, because that's what they're looking for, and that's what they're coming down on very hard. Is this isn't real? You know, this is just a transaction. This is not something that is genuine within the meaning of the program. So even if you're not able to be in Canada, that's not sufficient reason that IRCC will accept for why you haven't done.
No progress is whether you're in Canada or outside. Showing no progress is basically a death sentence to your application,
it's not
right?
an acceptable.
The IRCC doesn't like no progress. They need some traction. They need you to be working on your startup. Yes, nature of startup may define whether you have to be in Canada or not. That's another thing. But depending on your circumstances, consult with your immigration lawyer and on a regular basis, maybe every quarter or every month or so, right?
Yeah, it's good to check in. And again, like, understanding that there are limitations, it's what can you do despite these limitations that they want to see, right? Especially because this was a program that was so heavily scrutinized and so heavily misused previously that it does just, there's a lens on it that's just greater than, you know, other programs.
So let's get the second question, guys. If I ask, Wambui is asking the following question. Hello, is it possible to buy a business in Canada with a pathway to PR? PNP?
Yeah, exactly. The
provincial nominee program. Look at Alberta, look at Nova Scotia, and look at British Columbia.
And New Brunswick.
Very good provinces. We've been there physically. I love New Brunswick. I love British Columbia. So check out our guidelines at sobirovs.com. Thank you for your questions. Yes, you can buy a business, an existing business, and immigrate to Canada through PNP program with a goal of becoming a PR, permanent resident. Okay, next question. Let's get in from our audience. Wambui, thank you very much for your active participation. So Saib Shukurov is asking the following question. Why is IRCC immigration licensed agent email unavailable? Example, Keir Justin immigration, his license. Oh, okay. That is a scam, by the way, Saib. We've seen a lot of this scam with Justin Keir as an immigration consultant using some fake documents to persuade you to send him money or you know, if you probably found that person on social media through WhatsApp or social media channels. I've seen many fraud actions using that name. So please be careful. This is just a scam, okay? Disregard. Work with licensed immigration lawyers or licensed immigration consultants. It's good that you are doing your due diligence. Thank you for the question, but I'm pretty sure that this is a very known, popular scam that already exists. So, all right, Saeed, thank you very much for the question. So next question, if we have from the audience. Question number 2. Should the new Minister of Immigration first clean up the backlog, streamline approvals, or tackle post-arrival support? Wow, she needs to first catch up with the immigration.
I think backlogs and streamlining approvals or streamlining new applications kind of go hand in hand, right? What we are seeing and what we've been seeing for the last couple of years is when the backlogs spread very quickly. So you'll find backlogs in processing of applications. Those will end up, turning into either reconsideration requests or resubmissions. When the volume for those two methods become too great to handle, the next step that people take is to go to the federal court. And the federal court for the past 2+3, like since COVID, to be honest with you, has been immensely backlogged, so much so that now, over the last little while, we've seen the introduction of case managers. So if you as a lawyer are going to want to talk to the other lawyer on your client's behalf, you're unlikely going to get access to them unless you've built that connection previously. If you call through the federal court system, you're getting a case manager. So even on that end, the backlogs are really, the ripple effects are enormous, right? And with this change in policy, you're also going to get people relying on, alternative programs that are not intended for these purposes, specifically the humanitarian and compassionate PR program. I fully expect to see an even greater influx of people
who cannot define their status here. They either go to refugee pathway or go to HNC.
Exactly, which again exacerbates the issue. However, the other thing we're now seeing is that to deal with the backlogs, what they're doing is they're pausing intake for a lot of these key programs within Canada, particularly the family sponsorship or self-employed program, are being either put on hold or, like for family sponsorship, for parent sponsorship, specifically parent and grandparent, they're now starting to slowly do draws from candidates for 2020, right?
2020.
And they're halting new intake. You also can't do that to people, right? You also can't tell them, a lot can happen in 3 to 4 years. It's very tough to tell them we're not accepting anyone new for the next foreseeable, who knows how long, because we have to deal with the backlog. That's not fair to people either, especially for a program that's so integral and that's so, tied to Canada's key principle of family reunification. You also, as you said, you've got the self-employed program. Plenty of people have really, really great businesses and ideas that just don't fit into the realm of
business immigration that are open still.
Either they're not innovative like what's needed for the SUV, or they're not, maybe they don't meet the net worth or income threshold or investment threshold for the PNPs. That doesn't mean they're bad businesses. It just means there's nothing available to them, right? So I don't think you can I think those have to happen simultaneously, and I think
backlog and streamlining goes hand in hand.
I mean, again, a lot of things that have happened over the last couple months just don't make sense in light of that. You have IRCC laying off a third of their staff. Why?
Is it because the AI?
Well, I mean,
Chinook AI?
Well, this is the other thing. A lot of, if you look on LinkedIn, if you're following the immigration law space, a lot of colleagues are reporting that there's different versions of the AI that was used.
It used to be 3.0, now they backtrack to the older version.
So it raises questions. What was going on with the 3.0 version?
It was a beta version.
That was so bad that they had to go backwards. And what impact has that had on files? Fair enough, if we're moving to an era where AI is it is the reality for a lot of things, and it helps with efficiency, fair enough, but one, you can't make people the test subjects for a faulty AI. That just leads to bigger issues.
Test on humans, right?
Right? And then you also can't, in the meantime, lay off staff that have the knowledge and have the experience.
Who could help you with the backlog? They could help with the 1/3 of.
You do need both. You do need both.
Let's bring on the screen the current backlog situation, just as an addition to this question. Thank you, by the way. It's a great question. Currently, over 2 million total applications are in the backlog of IRCC inventory. 1.2 million is within service standards. 800,000 is exceeding service standards. So, and then the spread of these applications is temporary residents 500,000, permanent residents 478,000. That's a lot, Mariam. We have enough in the pipeline for the next 1.5 years at least. So if we are taking 385,000 this year as permanent residents, you have a pipeline of temporary residents which are potentially going to this permanent residence pipeline, and then ultimately, citizenship is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's 82% of this, as you can see, is a good standard.
But then to humanize those numbers a little bit more, what that actually means is you've got students who are losing out on deposits, they're losing out on opportunities to learn. You've got employers who are losing out on key talent that they desperately need, that they can't bring in a timely manner. You have business owners who, especially, I mean, like whether you're buying or starting up a business, they're losing out on opportune economic conditions and environments to either launch their business. They're losing out on key time to complete the purchase and come run their business. And their employees or prospective employees are losing out on good jobs and opportunities.
Overall, Canada is losing in this trade war times. Okay, and next question. Let's bring the next question. Okay, I have a question that was sent to me. I will read it. Let's discuss priorities. Okay, we did that. From what you've seen so far, is IRCC leadership finally willing to listen to those of us working on the front lines, like us?
Yeah.
Okay, or are they still trapped in Ottawa echo chambers?
This is a tough question because I do know that we do have the Canadian Immigration Lawyers Association that serves in part as an advocacy group, and
other bar associations like Ontario, CBA, OBA,
yeah, and they have been working as much as possible, and it is usually like volunteer hours throughout their day, to advocate for their clients, for different programs, provide input on different policies that are either suggested or being implemented. But the reality is the changes that have come about, the monumental and fundamental changes,
tectonic changes that
have come out over the last year are so great that there's just not enough people to address everything. So what happens is you start picking and choosing what is the most crucial,
what's your priority,
and what is the priority, and focusing your energy on that. So there is advocacy. It's just everyone's spread too thin. Changes are coming too fast. By the time you've wrapped your head around one thing, another thing has happened that everyone's reeling from. And at the same time, you're sitting and you're trying to explain these changes to your clients. You're trying to calm everyone down, find alternatives, be as sympathetic and available to everyone as possible in the meantime. So is there advocacy? Yes. Is that advocacy being taken as seriously as it needs to be? Is this expertise within the field being taken as seriously as it needs to be? I don't think so.
Okay, good. And my own question to you. We see a lot of comments from the South, from the United States being 51st state and so on, this nonsense that we listen every day. What's your take? What spring is coming, summer is coming, now it's warmer weathers. Do you expect an influx of people from South just walking through the borders and trying to get a status in Canada? Will that negatively affect the backlog again?
I don't know about walking across the border so much, but definitely, I mean, like the day after the election, frankly, we had over 100 emails from people going, how do I get out of Americans, as fast as possible? Yeah. And there has been an influx of Americans looking at opportunities to immigrate to Canada, which again, this is a demographic that didn't typically look at Canada or look at immigration, that now is adding to the already overwhelming volume and interest in Canada. So there is going to be greater interest. I think, let's see how things go. The more dire people feel in their circumstances, the more willing, in general, whether it's the U.S. or otherwise, to risk coming and staying in Canada without legal status, right, or overstaying, which is, again, not something that's good for anyone, not good for them, not good for the system, not good for Canada as a whole. You've got people, it's just, this is why I say so much of Canada's immigration policy is no longer dependent on just what's happening internally, but the very real factors at
external
play
factors.
externally.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's switch gears towards immigration. Do you think, should we expect any new business immigration program from the new minister, new government, whenever they come, that will, or should we just going to see the tweaks to the old immigration programs? What's needed, evolution or revolution in business immigration?
I think both are needed. I think the provinces need to have a greater hand in this than they currently are. I mean, typically on a provincial level, if we're talking about the provincial nomination programs, the entrepreneur streams are not are a small fraction of the overall volume that they see. That I don't think that's going to be impacted by the cuts, for example. But what we're seeing at the federal court level as well is the challenges. You go through the PNP program, the province says, great, we want to work with you, sign the business performance agreement. They go to apply for the work permit, IRCC refuses the work permit because we don't believe you'll be economically able to do whatever.
Well,
right?
provinces decided to take that person in.
Exactly.
And okay.
And so
you think the nomination, the whole mechanism should be more deferred to provinces? They know best.
I think so.
What's needed in the rural Alberta community or BC community?
I think so, and they're better equipped to support people. They're a lot easier to get in touch with. Like you can give them a call, request a meeting.
Yeah.
They're very accessible,
Yeah.
and they have a vested interest in their province. Not to say that the federal government doesn't have a vested interest in the economic growth and improvement on a provincial level, but there's just only so much that each level can handle, right? So give the provinces a little bit more control over these aspects, build a better rapport with them so that you don't end up in situations where people are, everyone else is on board to get this going, to have this person come in and provide benefit, except for IRCC. And then you get caught up in months.
So there's a miscommunication between federal and provincial. Like the objective is the same, but then the scrutiny is different. When the entrepreneur is scrutinized and accepted on a provincial level and said, yeah, I like this guy, give him a work permit, give him an opportunity to come and perform on the performance agreement, a legally binding agreement.
Yeah, arguably the provincial vetting process through the PNP system is a lot greater and more intensive than IRCC's. They go through net worth verification, they have their whole business plan evaluated, they sign a contract. Like it's far more rigorous than anything that IRCC is able to do or any of the standards IRCC sets. Yeah.
Let's look at the screen again and bring the immigration level plans, and I have a question about that. As you know, federal business category will go significantly low this year, like 25, we have around 2,000, maximum 3,000, which includes the self-employed, which is now paused, and startup visa. Considering there are thousands of startup visa applications in the backlog, this is just drop in the bucket, isn't it? Like 2,000, then 1,000, then 1,000. What are we looking at? Will new government change this plan? Because this was changed, remember? During Sean Fraser, the previous minister before Mark Miller, they had more ambitious plans here. I remember 5,000 or 6,000 on the federal business category. Then Mark Miller came and he said, okay, we'll change between 25 to 27, we'll change the numbers. Do you think these numbers are being changed just because of the elections this year? The whole decreasing the numbers
I think there is
statement.
There is a level of political pandering going on, for sure. As I said, conservatives and liberals are neck and neck. That means that they're fighting over the same segment of people to kind of put them over the line. And so you see that this is a lot more of a conservative.
This is signature conservative,
it's
right?
A lot more, exactly. Than what we typically see from the Liberal government. What we've seen, throughout the first 4 years under Trudeau, the 2 years into the pandemic, all these different things. So I would hope that, especially when it comes to business owners, this would change. Sure, fine, there are certain realities that we have to accept, that maybe certain areas around the country are a lot more oversaturated, overpopulated. You want to direct people into, areas that need more development and more economic.
And do it indirectly, because legally you cannot do it, right?
But they do through the PNP program.
PNP program.
That's another. That's the thing. You can leverage the PNP programs in the provinces and their input a lot more than what's currently happening. That being said, there's also some realities you have to accept. You want to invite people to come from around the world to set up businesses, and you're making their PR contingent on the business's success. Are you sending them to places where they can actually have
fail?
Exactly. Is
they
it
will
likely
fail.
that they're going to fail, or is there opportunity for them there?
Yeah.
Are you sending them to places that are not diverse and they risk, social ostracization or anything like that? Are you, what tools and what flexibility is there to kind of offer them? Because so much of business is also outside of people's control. It's the economic conditions, the social conditions,
the trade war, the tariffs,
predicted a pandemic to happen, right?
Yeah.
These are all things that have an impact on business, and so how much flexibility are we offering to people, and what does that assessment process look like?
Yeah.
Right?
I want to see a new passive investment program from this new government. Like, look, if Trump was smart enough to come up with a golden card option, and he sold already 1,000 golden cards and raised $5 billion for U.S. economy, why cannot we do it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would call it a golden card. There's a lot to consider around here. I think we can't underestimate the benefit of economic stimulus, especially, we've been going through a recession for like the past 5 years, and every other year they kind of remind you that we're heading into another recession, recession's continuing.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can discount the value of economic,
free money, in a way.
Free money, so to speak, right? I do understand, I will say though, that I understand the hesitation, particularly when you consider how Canada's social welfare system works.
Well, we need doctors, we need hospitals, we need bridges and highways.
We do.
We can build for that money, no?
Theoretically, you could. That's what it comes down to, is how's that money going to be spent, and that's the discussion and the plan that needs to be in place. Because I understand the hesitation people have to say, like, okay, fine, people are paying money and getting citizenship. I know from one lens people are like, PR, sorry. They're getting PR. I know from one lens people are saying this devalues the process for people. It's, citizenship is not on sale or anything like that. The other side of it is, there's already so much strain on a very limited...
So much fraud already happening. Involves so money, right?
Yeah, and so much strain on our social security systems, whether it's healthcare, whether it's EI, whether it's, all these different things that we really are privileged to have in Canada, but don't go as far as we need them to. That the fear that, fine, people throw some money into the pot and then they have access. They never live here, they never work here, but they benefit from everything, whether it's...
They pay taxes as much, they buy property, they inject stimulus into the economy. So
so and this is maybe more so a matter of, we're talking about a hypothetical program here, but these are considerations that need to be taken into account, particularly in how this program is presented and how it's explained to the public at large, right? Because it's normal to have these fears, particularly when you're experiencing it day to day, and you're also, bombarded with it on a policy and a political and a media level, that there's not enough of this, there's not enough of that. Even
1,000 spots for that golden Canadian red card, I call it red card. Red, with a red carpet on it. And so let's have another question, because the active participation is highly encouraged. Thank you very much, Wambui. As a follow-up on previous query, C10, C11, C12, significant benefit as pathways to purchasing a business is not pathway any longer to PR? Are they still available? When you go through C11, C10, C12, which is intracompany transfer, you can still get a work permit. That's one thing.
Yes, so
you
you
can
can
get a Canadian experience if you are an employee, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
C10, particularly C10 and C12, they are often used for business owners, but they are not exclusive to business owners. You can be an employee and still utilize them. The reason it depends is, I mean, this is where you have to really get strategic about your immigration strategy. You can, for example, let's say you decide on Alberta or you decide on British Columbia. You go, you get your C11 work permit, you get any of these work permits as a business owner, right? Picking the province strategically is important because some of these provinces do have pathways for people to end up engaging in the PNP program if they're based in province and they meet the other conditions.
For Atlantic provinces, in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah.
They have Atlantic Immigration Program, AIP.
Yeah, you've got Alberta does allow for people who've set up their businesses in one of these communities and have been operating for at least a year. You can still go through the PNP program. BC also has mechanisms to allow people who've established businesses to stay and get PR through the PNP program. But that's where strategy kicks in. Where it gets more difficult is if you choose one of these programs or you go with one of these programs in a province that either doesn't have a PNP like Ontario or doesn't have an entrepreneur stream in their PNP like Ontario, or it doesn't have a mechanism to kind of bring people in through PNP if they're already established. That's where the problem is, because when you use these programs now, what you're accepting is that there is no straightforward, clear pathway to PR.
It's two separate journeys, a C11 journey and PR journey.
Yeah,
right?
and it's highly susceptible to, at a PR stage, to policy changes, and so that's the risk you take. You go into this knowing that I am here as a temporary resident to maintain my status. I still have to make, invest money. I have to build the business. I have to establish this and put this time and effort and money in. But there's no guarantee that at the end of this journey for me, it's going to be PR.
So doing these streams alone and then hoping for PR is a bit risky, as I understood.
It's a bit risky. You
but
have to have an
combining
appetite for
them under PNP, then it's more certain as long as you perform on the
Yeah, and I mean, there's a conversation to be had at that point of why not just go straight into the PNP, but it is an option for people if you're
PNP
not
sometimes
sure yet.
requires net worth. People choose, some people choose C11, C10 because net worth requirement is not there,
Yeah,
right?
it's more flexible. You have the opportunity. You don't have to, no one's looking at you to invest a specific amount of money right off the bat. So it's a good opportunity if you have time to kind of dip your toes in, get used to the environment, make a decision if business is really viable for you or not, and you want to do business there or not, before you dive into something more structured and with higher expectations like the PNP program.
Yeah, okay. And we will be coming up with a new article soon. Stay tuned. Check out Sobirov's law firm website, sobirovs.com, and also make sure that you subscribe to our channels. We will be bringing new news about that, the change on job offer points being eliminated and so on. So next question, we have another one from our listeners. Yeah, as a follow-up, we got that. Is PNP the only option? I think, to be honest, startup visa and PNP are the only options
Right now?
if the goal is PR.
Yes.
Yes? From the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
So next, we don't have any. Okay. Good. I think we've been talking about an hour.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Final 3 tips for those business immigration applicants that are thinking right now. March 26, what's going to happen? What's your pieces of advice?
You have to be adaptable.
Adaptable.
Like, you really do. You have to steel yourself for adaptability and flexibility because things change quite quickly. You also have to accept the financial risk that comes with this. You can get your foot in the door with...
Well, businessmen, they are accustomed to risk, right? So
Sure, but if it, like when I say financial risk, I also mean, there's the amount you expect or anticipate spending, and then there's the amount that you end up needing to spend to keep the business going, right? Those are 2 different things, and what we've seen from clients is no matter how much you try to prepare, you're ultimately really going to learn as you go, and so you have to be prepared for that, and you have to plan in advance. If you know that you are looking or you're interested at some point in PR, and you want to do that for a business route, you have to plan out 3 to 5 years, if not more, in advance to have a clear vision of what this could look like. Mixed with a little bit of flexibility because we're in an era of change.
So I see adaptability, financial risks, and then long-term planning.
Long-term planning.
And ready to pivot when necessary.
Yes,
Again, you circle back
You
to
circle
the
back, it's a cycle.
it's a cycle. It's a vicious
Yeah, yeah.
cycle. But we are here to help.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, let us know. We have last question. Our assistant is insisting. Okay. Whoa. Okay, that's a biggie. Okay, how do you think this minister, the new minister, will handle provincial federal tensions, especially with business immigration programs that require better coordination? We just touched upon it, but
Yeah.
anything to add?
Again, I think in the grand scheme of things, the entrepreneur streams under PNPs aren't going to be as heavily affected because they're not making up the most volume within the system. So I think they'll be okay. I do think they'll see an influx of applicants than they're usually used to, but not so much that it'll overshadow like the workers or student streams or things like that. Where the realignment needs to happen is at that work permit stage and at that PR stage, or at the very least at the work permit stage, right? We are seeing from a PR perspective, a lot of PNP draws have been happening over the last couple of months, so that's running relatively smoothly, but it's this new kind of intake that needs to be better set up, right?
Yep.
If the province is giving the go-ahead, either you trust the province and their system and their vetting process, or you don't. And if you don't, then what's the point of having this and kind of putting people through the ringer, making them prepare all of these things, mentally preparing to even come to Canada and do what they committed to do if the work permit is just not accessible to them.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you very much for your active participation. It's been great. Mariam, thank you for your time. I know you're super busy, but we are busy to learn from you what bothers you, what are your pain points. Make sure you subscribe to our social media channels. We will be bringing live conversations going forward, and send us your questions in the comments section. I promise me and my team will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you again for your participation. See you next time.